Heading into this afternoon's showdown inside the Dome, Syracuse men's basketball coming off a blowout loss at Clemson. The Orange never got it to a single-digit game in the second half down in South Carolina. On the other hand, Pittsburgh, a team that started 12-2 this year, had lost 4 straight. So to say both teams needed a win would be an understatement. In the end, a back-and-forth blow-for-blow battle ended up in favor of the Panthers, who come away winners 77-73. Orange Press Pass is here to break it all down, and we start right now. Glad to have you with us on another episode of Orange Press Pass. Andrew Selover, Griffin, Marcy, John Boccio, the fellas are all here. We'll talk to Grace Piatko in just a minute, live from the Dome as well, to get some instant reaction to Syracuse's loss. Let's start with you guys. First reaction, the Orange fall by 4. They had their chances.
They did. My first thing about this game is it was a great 30, but not a great 40. You had 30 minutes of good basketball, but you got to play a full 40. That first half, you're up by 9 points, as their largest lead of the game in that first half. J.J. Starling goes out and gets in foul trouble, and things just start to fall apart. You had a 5-minute stretch in that first half where you went without a field goal, another 5-minute stretch that was bad in the second half, and that's where this game was lost.
Griffin, you brought up exactly what my biggest takeaway from this game is, and that is that fouls only matter when you reach 3. And J.J. Starling was pulled from this game just 9 minutes in, didn't play the rest of the half, and that killed Syracuse in this one. Pitt followed that up with a 7-0 run. They were just 1 point away from being in the lead, eventually got their second lead of the game, and only went into the half down a point. So that's why my biggest point is you could sit J.J. Starling for a couple minutes, but you can't sit him the rest of the half because it totally killed the momentum.
Well, let's show you how those things shook down, especially with J.J. Starling and Syracuse, and how Pittsburgh came out on top. Your highlights from this afternoon's contest between the Orange and the Panthers inside the Dome. Again, Syracuse off a loss at Clemson. Pittsburgh losers of 4 straight. And Starling coming off a 25-point performance. Yeah, late in the shot clock, early first possession. He'll hit that. But, John, those his only points of the first half. You thought he should have played more even after 2 fouls.
Absolutely. 2 fouls is nothing in the grand scheme of the game, and that absolutely killed everything for the Orange. Elijah Moore followed that up with a 3, but J.J. Starling's points in the first, not enough.
It was a good start for Syracuse. That Elijah Moore 3 put him up 13-4 to start, but Jalen Lowe and company had an answer. Lowe was impressive. Syracuse kept a slim lead throughout most of that first half, and a late shot from Lucas Taylor would ensure the Orange Griffin had a lead at the break. It wasn't a bad first 20 minutes.
It wasn't, but you are up by as many as 9 points, and it just kind of dissipated when you could have had that advantage for stronger long.
And then the turnovers started to come in that second half for Syracuse. You see Jair Davis, Lucas Taylor not on the same page there, and Syracuse would fall behind for the first time today against Pittsburgh. Chris Bell, he has been silent for most of the season. He gets the high five from his coach there, a little emotion as he trims the lead to just 3 for the Panthers. But there's Jalen Lowe again. He was loving to put the finger to his mouth and shush the Dome crowd all afternoon long. Eddie Lampkin dominated down low. That's one area where Syracuse had this game wrapped around its fingertips, and they just couldn't get enough rebounds despite a historic day for Eddie Lampkin as he sets a career high with 24 rebounds. Syracuse a couple chances late. Chris Bell, another big 3. He kept the Orange in it. He cut it to a 2-point lead with 10 seconds left, but both free throws went down for Pitt. Orange down by 4, and the last heaves at the buzzer proved to be not enough for the Cuse. Orange fall, they go to 9-11 on the season, and we mentioned Eddie Lampkin's career day down low on the glass, not enough.
Just really struggled to find some production outside of Lampkin on the glass. He really dominated, but it's just not a one-man job. All 5 people have to hit the glass.
He dominated on the boards, but he didn't dominate in the scoring column, and that was what killed SU today.
Jalen Lowe, the guy that dominated in the scoring column with 22 points, and Pittsburgh gets the win over Syracuse. We welcome Grace Piatko in from a deconstructed Dome behind you, Grace. Let's talk about Syracuse's performance today. The Orange had plenty of late mini runs. They were pushing the pace, they were pushing the momentum late in the game. It felt like every 2 minutes They gave Pitt a test. They had momentum on their side. What did you see from inside the dome on how Pitt was able to push off those runs and keep the lead from start to finish there in the last 10 minutes?
Hey, Andrew. Yeah, after the game, both coaches agreed that this game came down to toughness, and Adrian Autry was pretty blunt, saying they just were not tough enough, while Jeff Capel credited his squad for being relentless and not giving up, especially when Syracuse came within 3 or 4.
Grace, you mentioned toughness there, and that was a lot really shown in the first half with the full court press that Pitt put on Syracuse, and it forced 8 Syracuse turnovers in the first half. What were they doing defensively to stall and falter that Orange offense?
They had the full course press, and they only allowed 1 shot off of that. Adrian Autry wasn't necessarily upset with that. He was more upset with the defense not making the plays when needed, and like you just said, those 8 turnovers, which they did have better in the second half.
Grace, good to see you. I wanted to focus on some of the positives that this game brought. The biggest one, obviously, being Eddie Lampkin, a career performance, a Syracuse record performance. Just what made him so dominant today?
Absolutely, he had a great game, 23 rebounds. In the first half, you could tell he was getting outboxed, but in the second half, he wasn't having it. He's on his 8th double-double of the season, and he's had 5 of the last 6 games, those double-doubles. This is the first time since 2023 with Jesse Edwards that someone has had more than 20 rebounds in a game.
Grace, busy weekend for you. Thanks for your coverage in the Dome. Best of luck to your Bills tomorrow afternoon in Kansas City. All right, you heard Grace mention a couple of those big points for Syracuse down low, the physicality, the turnovers, everything that Adrian Autry had to say. We'll hear from both head coaches. We'll break down where things went right and wrong for these two squads after a quick break. OPP's back with you in the CitrusTV studios. Andrew Selover, Griffin, Marcy, John Boccio. Already broke down the highlights from this one this afternoon as Pitt gets the 4-point win over Syracuse. Guys, coming into this game, Syracuse undefeated when they led at the halftime break. Today they lead by 1 at the half. They come out and they lose by 4. So the first time this season that Syracuse has held a lead at the break and ended up losing. They do that because they really struggled in that second half. Let's take a look at what Syracuse did first half versus second half and where the Orange maybe went wrong in those second 20 minutes, Griffin.
Well, you said that it's the first time this season they lost when they're leading at halftime. They haven't been leading at halftime very much this season in the first place. But part of that comes from in the second half there, J.J. Starling had some more minutes, so the offense was just kind of out of flow because in the first half, most of it they had to play without J.J. Starling. In that second half, once he came in, kind of disrupted the offense a little bit, and they just weren't, Lampkin and Starling weren't playing that great together.
And even on top of that, what really hurt Syracuse more than just disrupting the flow of the offense was Pitt really turned it on the offensive side of the ball, upped both of their shooting percentages by over 20, shot almost 60% from the field in the second half, over 40% from deep. That killed SU's momentum, especially when Pitt wasn't playing great in the first.
If you look at the numbers, first to second half, what sticks out there, Griffin?
To me, what sticks out is the 3-point field goal percentage. Not that bad in terms of percentage. percentage-wise, but Syracuse shot more three-pointers today than they had all season long. They had almost over 30 attempts from long range. That's not what you want from this team, which isn't exactly loaded with shooters. So why are you shooting over 30 attempts from deep? And that's what really stuck out to me in this game was three-point shooting.
Jair Davis shot 4 threes in today's game. He's made just 7 all season. That it goes to show why is Syracuse so surrounded by three-point shooting. And then even on the Pitt side, as I mentioned, both of their field goal and three-point percentages went up astronomically in this one. They also started having an answer for Eddie Lampkin on the glass, who had 12 in just the first half, rebounds that is. And then the points go to show really why Syracuse fell off so much in the second.
I'm also interested to point out that the turnover number, impressive for Pittsburgh. They turned it over 3 times in the first half. You're thinking, that's pretty good if you're Jeff Capel. Can we do that again in the second half? No, they did it better. They didn't turn it over once in the second half, and that's an area that the 7th-year head coach of the Panthers mentioned after the game that his team was really keyed in on against a turnover-prone Orange team.
You know, we knew coming in that they had turned the basketball over. You know, they had turned the ball over a lot this year. And so we wanted just to kind of, if they made some mistakes, then we could do it. But if not, we don't have to defend their defense for their offense for an extended period of time.
John, that's not exactly the scouting report that you want to hear from an opposing coach on your team is, we know they turned the ball over. This is a Syracuse team, second worst in the ACC.
Well, I mean, he's not wrong, right? Syracuse turned the ball over 8 times in the first half alone. That was horrendous. And then, yes, it got tuned down in the second half, but 8 in 20 minutes is egregious. And that is just not what you want to see. And Jeff Capel totally had the scouting report right because they had a ton of points off of SU's turnover.
Well, that's what happens when J.J. Starling's not out there. Ever since he's come back from injury, he's been the one playing point guard for Syracuse, and he was only limited to 9 minutes in the first half. So when going against the full court press without your primary point guard, things are going to get ugly quick.
It was funny. I was in Clemson earlier this week for Syracuse's loss there, and there were a lot of questions to Adrian Autry because, again, turnovers were a problem. And obviously, college basketball fans will tell you live turnovers a much bigger problem than dead ball turnovers, and Syracuse struggling with those live ball turnovers. And a lot of questions posed as to why is this still happening at this point of the season? That's really troubling for a coach that can't seem to fix that problem when you reach the middle point of conference play, Griffin.
And yeah, well, to me, it all stems from when you look at this team play offense, it's just a bunch of standing around. There's no flow. It's not like they're running sets where they have plans to give it to different players. If you're just standing around, no one's on the same page, and that's clear every time this team's on offense. It is just stagnant, no flow, and that's why it's not clean at all.
I think my favorite quote of the season so far came from Coach Autry after last game, and he said, "I don't know why we think we can make full court passes. I just don't get it." That just sums up exactly what's been going on this season. Syracuse is trying to do too many things on offense. There's so little going on that it makes players think there's too much somehow. It's so confusing to me because this Syracuse offense was really bad turning the ball over today. Just a lot of errant passes that can't happen.
So Syracuse turns it over 8 more times than Pittsburgh. They do out-rebound Pittsburgh by 17 today. So the Orange, very impressive. Eddie Lampkin obviously led the charge there. You talked about Coach Autry. Let's hear from Coach Autry on where he thought his team stood in terms of out-toughening the opposing team.
But we knew, and I knew, and I talked to these guys about toughness. And, I thought toughness at the time that plays need to be made, they made them, we didn't, and that was the difference in the game. You can look at it.
So your team wins the glass by 17, but they weren't tough enough, Griffin.
To me, it was just the plays weren't happening at the right time, but I think that's kind of an outrageous statement to some degree. That was one of the tougher games we've seen from Syracuse this season, and maybe it just didn't happen at the right time. I do think that's what ended up costing them. This game was not making the right plays at the right time, but I think that's a little extreme to say this team wasn't tough. 48 rebounds, that's the most they've had in a long time. It's definitely the most they've had this month. I think that's a little bit extreme to say, but I do see where he's come from. It was the wrong replays at the wrong time.
I just found it funny that Eddie Lampkin had more total rebounds himself than Pitt did on the defensive glass the entire game. Eddie Lampkin had total domination in the painted area in this one, and still they couldn't get it done. And that's primarily because Eddie Lampkin wasn't shooting the ball. He wasn't going back up with it. Only took 6 shots today.
So Eddie Lampkin doesn't score much, but he does put up 23 rebounds. That was the most for a Syracuse player in 35 years. And it still isn't enough despite winning the glass by 17. Rarely does a team win on the glass by 17 and lose a basketball game. Syracuse manages to do that today. They didn't quite shoot the ball well enough, did they, John?
No, not in the slightest in the second half. And we talked about it a little bit prior, but Syracuse was just taking way too many threes. It was Eddie Lampkin rebound, immediate kick out. Eddie Lampkin rebound, immediate kick out. And that was how it was designed the entire time. Talked about Jair Davis taking 4 threes earlier. One of the most crazy plays I've seen this year was Lampkin pulling down a board and kicking out for Jair Davis, who's only made 7 threes on the year. And stuff like that just shouldn't happen. Go back up strong.
Well, if you're talking about the fault being on Lampkin, I think it's more on the three-point. Lampkin should be putting those back up. But Coach Autry said after that last Clemson game, we need to be shooting threes. We need to be shooting all these different long-range shots. Why does you need to be doing that? I don't understand. You don't need to be doing that to compete. You're still in the bottom 3 of the ACC in three-point shot attempts. There's no reason you need to be shooting that many attempts from long range when your only consistent shooter has been J.J. Starling all year long.
So the shooting not enough for Syracuse today in the loss. We got to give out our player of the game today, and we're going to give it to Eddie Lampkin. Sure, he didn't shoot the ball well, but he sure as heck rebounded the ball well. Today, Eddie Lampkin goes for 23 rebounds, 10 points, and 3 assists. For Eddie, that's a new career high, and he surpassed his rebounding career high at about the 15-minute mark of the second half. He was dominant. He had 12 rebounds in the first half alone, and he has the most rebounds for a Syracuse player in 35 years since Derek Coleman back in 1990. An impressive showing on the glass for the big man down low, Eddie Lampkin, but it still is in a losing effort as the Orange lose by 4. Another break here on Orange Press Pass. When we return, we'll check around the world of college basketball, big games in the SEC and the Big 12, and we'll recap more of today's loss for Syracuse at home.
Hey Bobo, do trees tell each other stories?
I'm sorry. I'm afraid I don't know that.
Hey, why don't we go find out? Listen.
Can birds draw pictures?
I don't have an answer for that.
Dad, do stars visit their friends?
Look!
Hey Bobo, do trees tell each other stories?
I'm sorry. I'm afraid I don't know that.
Hey, why don't we go find out? Listen.
Do clouds take naps?
I couldn't tell you.
Dad, do stars visit their friends?
Look!
Sticking with us here on Orange Press Pass, Syracuse falls to Pittsburgh by 4 inside the Dome. The Orange go to 9-11 on the season. Panthers jump up. They snap a 4-game losing streak. They go to 13-6 here in the middle of ACC play. Let's check out what's going on around the world of ACC and college basketball. A number of ranked matchups. We'll start with the big one in the ACC, tipping off right about now in Winston-Salem. Wake's won 6 straight. Duke hasn't lost in the ACC, though, Griffin.
Yeah, and you know what Duke has, and that's Cooper Flag. He's going to be dominant all season long, and that's what he'll do once again today. Winston-Salem, doesn't matter what gym he's in, he's going to dominate.
There are rumors that Janai Broome might be back tonight for number 1 Auburn as they take on number 6 Tennessee, John.
And that'll be a huge advantage. Auburn has steamrolled with him as their number 1 option, and that'll be a big matchup to watch out for if he does come back.
In-state showdown favoring the Aggies right now, and Vanderbilt taking Kentucky to the wire in Nashville. A number of big games in the SEC, as there always are, it feels like. Welcome to the SEC. Let's shift back to this Syracuse loss to Pittsburgh. Let's revisit the performance of Eddie Lampkin. I know that Adrian Autry said after the game that Syracuse wasn't tough enough. Do you think Eddie Lampkin is grouped into that?
There's just no way that's true. He had 23 rebounds today. I have never heard of someone with 23 rebounds being still told they're not tough enough. He was a monster today. He's had a double-double in 5 of his last 6 games. He's hit double figures in each of the last 6 games. There's no way he can be grouped into that. He's been completely dominant.
So, John, is the problem really that Syracuse wasn't tough enough and Eddie Lampkin's rebounds weren't enough, or are there other problems?
No, the problem is that this offense in total isn't good enough, right? Eddie Lampkin and J.J. Starling have made a great pair throughout the course of this season, and Eddie Lampkin has even done great for other reasons because his playmaking was phenomenal today, finding good looks, getting good options all around. It's just that his teammates can't hit shots, right? That's why Syracuse was so bad in today's second half. The final 20 minutes, Syracuse went mute from the field, and that's what killed him. It's not Eddie Lampkin, it's his teammates.
A well-rounded Syracuse team tries to go on the road and win in California, West Coast trip. How do they get that done? Because the last 2 games, they've started off strong, but how can they play the full 40 minutes? Because certainly today, they blew an early lead, and they did the same at Clemson.
It's going to come down to using your best players together. You have to have Starling and Lampkin dominate and work together. It can't just be a one-man show. One guy goes and then the next guy goes. Has to be playing together and maybe get a little bit more production from your forwards. Can't be Lucas Taylor and Chris Bell not producing at all on the wings. You have to get some extra production from your 3rd and 4th guys if you want a chance in conference play each and every night.
Lucas Taylor, one of the 3 guys in double digits today, yet still shot 3 for 8 from the field. There are points in this game where you just have to point to the other options. Elijah Moore still getting a start for the umpteenth time in a row, yet only plays 15 minutes in this one. We've seen him have starts where he only plays 6 minutes, right? This team is built with a bunch of guys that have really struggled to play together, and overall, it was more a matter of Syracuse was playing bad and Pitt found its stride. They got hot at the right time and shut down the other options for SU.
So my question to you, John, if you're Adrian Autry, is there a simple fix? You talk about playing time. Is there a guy that should be out there more, or it's just
Absolutely
a lost cause?
Not. It's a lost cause at this point. There is no reason that Syracuse should even play these other games. When you really crack down. All right. When you really crack down the course of this season, Syracuse has found no answer for any of their solutions, and that's why there's a point where you just have to say it's at a loss.
Let's not go to they shouldn't play the game.
Forfeit the season.
I think what you're getting at there is if you're a Syracuse fan and you want to see your team go back to March Madness, at this point, your resume isn't going to be good enough no matter what you do the rest of the way. You're just going to have to win the ACC tournament if you want to make March Madness.
Yeah, well, good luck with that one. This point of the season should be, I think you got to focus a little bit more on the production of the young guys. Hopefully Donnie Freeman can make his way back. And I think you need to work on building the confidence of Elijah Moore. What is the point of having him start every game, play 12 minutes? There's no sense in that. He's been going through slumps. You need to get him prepared. You want this guy to be here. Production, and for 4 years, you need to get your young guys some more talent.
Yeah, I mean, it's not like Elijah Moore is going to be going to the NBA after this year. You're likely going to have him for another season, especially since he's only playing 10 minutes a game. At this point, it's, hey, how do we keep Elijah Moore on this roster and not going into the transfer portal, especially with a huge recruiting class coming in next year? That's what my biggest concern would be if I was Adrian Autry. Let's try to keep an experienced, fun, good roster that can build for the future.
So let's talk about that. You mentioned the transfer portal. It's not too early to think about who might be here next year. There's guys like J.J. Starling, Donnie Freeman, Elijah Moore. I think those are probably the top 3 in my eyes. Griffin, do you see those guys being back on campus at Syracuse next season?
I think you bring back 2 of the 3. I think Donnie Freeman comes back. I think one of the guards in J.J. Starling or Elijah Moore leaves. I think there's too much coming in. Kyan Anthony's coming in. I'm sure you'll bring another guy into the portal as well in the offseason. I think there'll be just too many cooks in the kitchen. One of the guards will head, either J.J. heads to the NBA or go to the portal. We're not sure yet.
I think J.J. Starling might be the only guy you get back of those 3, and that is purely because Donnie Freeman and Elijah Moore are both going to have their roles filled by another guy next year. You have Kyan Anthony coming in and Sadiq White, both play the same exact sort of style as Elijah Moore and Donnie Freeman, and that's why I'd be concerned if I was the Orange that I'm going to hold on to some of the best prospects I've had in years.
So a lot of questions still to be answered about the future of Syracuse basketball. One question that we have answered here is that the hopes of March Madness this season are looking bad and worse by the day. All right, one more break here on Orange Press Pass. We'll check out, after we return, what's going on around the Hill and the ACC standings as well that aren't very good for Syracuse.
Everybody has a dream. Mine was to see the ocean. And with a little help, I made it.
Closing out on Orange Press Pass, we teased you with the ACC standings. Let's show them to you, and let's show you why the hopes of March Madness for Syracuse are not looking good. John, in a conference that is projected to get maybe 5 teams in the big dance, Syracuse sits at 12th.
And it's gone this way all season long. Syracuse has shown glimpses here and there, I guess you could say, of being a solid team in the ACC, but when you really match them up against the teams that are better than them in the conference, they're at a complete loss. Pitt was a loss today and in pretty convincing fashion. Wake Forest, they lost by double digits. Louisville was a 20-point defeat. Clemson, another near 20-point defeat. It was just bad.
And Griffin, when you talk about this road trip to California next up, you got 2 teams ahead of you in the standings, Stanford and Cal.
For a long time this season, it looked like Syracuse might not make the ACC tournament. So if you can go out, pick up 1, maybe 2 wins out west, that'd be huge to make you feel a little bit more comfortable. You get some sense of a postseason play if you can pick up a couple important wins here on the road.
All right, as we finish up Orange Press Pass, it's time for our new segment that everybody's going to grow to love. It's time to sound off.
Let me tell you, this one's pretty simple. Without Batman and Robin together, Syracuse's basketball team looks ugly. And for Batman, I got J.J. Starling, and Robin is Eddie Lampkin.
Yeah,
this team needs their best players to play together as one. In the first half, you had J.J. Starling go out and play only 9 minutes. In the second half, Eddie Lampkin took an extended break, and those were the parts of this game where it all fell apart. You need your top 2 options complementing each other and working as one, and you just didn't see that today. You haven't seen that for most of the season. You really need to see that the rest of the way.
And I talked about it at the beginning of this show. I've kind of foreshadowed it throughout. The main reason that Syracuse has really struggled this season is because Eddie Lampkin has not been given the green light. He had half as many points as rebounds in this game. That's just not a regular. That's unheard of at a point. Coach Autry's offense, it hones in on its guards. It wants to shoot the three ball. But at a point, when a guy's grabbing 23 rebounds and he's basically the only reason you're in this game, let him get the board and let him go back up strong. It's what you're taught when you're 12. It should be what's taught when you're 23.
A lot of praise, I guess, for Eddie Lampkin in that segment, kind of, after he goes for 23 rebounds today. John, instant answer from you. What's your favorite international destination?
Madrid.
Madrid. All right. Our next Orange Press Pass is for our fans in Madrid. Wake up early with us at Madrid because this show starts at 2 a.m. Eastern Time after Syracuse plays Stanford on the West Coast. I believe if the math is mathing, that's an 8 a.m. start for you fans across the pond in Madrid. So join us for the Orange and the Cardinal. Griffin, what do you expect here?
I think Syracuse is going to have a chance to bounce back here, and I think they will take that chance. You'll jump out in front. You've seen them lose back-to-back games. I think Coach Autry will have this squad riled up and ready to go. Their first out west trip in a long time, and their first time going out to see those faraway conference opponents.
Hate to be that guy. I don't know if Autry will have his troops riled up and ready to go. We've seen a lot of bad losses in the past, and the only wins have come against opponents that are very, very far worse than that.
So it's Viva la Cardinal in the eyes of John Boccio when Syracuse takes on Stanford next time up. All right, Syracuse falls today. They go down to 9-11 on the season as this one finishes inside the Dome. Pitt 77 and Syracuse 73. It's been a pleasure to join John Boccio and Griffin Marcy alongside our executive producer, Gabe Perrin, and everybody that has been a part of this fantastic live show here at Citrus TV. I'm Andrew Selover saying good night. The Orange fall at the hands of the Panthers.